All right, it's good to see everybody tonight. You guys can go ahead and come on up here. So, tonight, we've been doing a relationship series through just talking through different kinds of relationships, through friendship, through relationship with one another in church, in all different aspects and in all different ways. And tonight, we have some friends here for a panel discussion. So these are friends of ours. So John and Katie McGregor, can you welcome them? Thank you. So John and Katie moved here right around the same time that Lindsay and the kids did, actually within just a couple of days. And so our daughter Marley and their daughter Ava were in the same class together, and so it was a really neat opportunity for them to grow together. And it made the transition for our daughter so much smoother having Ava. And now they're like little sisters, so it's pretty great. And then Lindsay is here as well, gracing the stage with me for the first time. So I'm super excited. So we're just going to go through some questions, and then if you guys have questions, you can grab your phones, and the QR code will be up on the screen. You can text in your questions. Many of you already have asked questions, and that's great. We will actually, I've already built those into some questions that I've asked already. So if you send in a question during this series and you feel like that hasn't been answered yet, give us a couple minutes tonight, and hopefully we will be able to get to that and answer that in a way that is good and meaningful for you. Okay? So let's dive in. John and Katie, tell us where you're from. Oh, yeah. Microphones. Those are good. Oh my gosh. I'm a terrible host. I'm the host with the least.
Oh, perfect.
I'm so sorry. My goodness. You guys.
Test.
The good news is these guys are like, you'll find this out, but they're Air Force leader people. And so, I got it. Thank you. So, now that people can hear you, tell us where you're from. Where'd you grow up?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. We're really humbled to be here, by the way. So thank you for this opportunity. Wonderful job on the praise team. You guys did a phenomenal job. So thank you for starting off the night so wonderfully. Katie McGregor, I am first-generation American. I only mention that because my family's from Ukraine. My dad immigrated when he was 8. And I say that because that's shaped a lot of my perspective of like what resiliency means. I think that means self-reliance. That's what I was taught at an early age, which is not necessarily the best for trying to surrender to God and give your life over. And so it's been a tough journey for me, and I'm relatively later to the faith, and so that's all part of my testimony. But not to get too ahead of myself, I grew up in Greenville, North Carolina. I'm the middle child, one of 3 girls.
Yeah. I'm John. It's really fantastic to kind of have the opportunity to meet you all. We've been talking to John for a long time about getting involved in some capacity, and so tonight is a great forum. Obviously, totally open mic, ask all the questions you want. I was joking with John. I said, hey, I feel like we're the bookends to you guys. As John and Lindsay, we look up to them so much, and their walk and their faith and their marriage and everything else. And I told John, I was like, we're literally the opposite. So I feel like that's why he brought us here secretly. But anyway, I'm from Texas originally. I've got 2 younger siblings. They're 11 years and 14 years younger. So grew up in kind of a only child type of home.
Very good. So tell us a little bit about your family.
So I mentioned my dad, first-generation American, enlisted in the Air Force when he was 19 years old. was a bachelor most of his life, got married at 40, and so he was a little bit older when I came around. My mom, stay-at-home mom, she struggled with mental health. I think that's where I got my hard side from my dad, that tough side, and I got my compassion from my mom. She was a bipolar schizophrenic who was kind of in and out of psychiatric wards probably every couple of years. So I don't know about you guys, if you feel like you have a family secret that you've kind of had to hold. I think every family struggles with different things. In my household, my mom's suicide attempts, and she was, I would say, never lashed out at us girls. She was very compassionate towards us girls, but she was very self-destructive. And so it was, I grew up in my early adulthood always waiting for the other shoe to drop, because things would be stable and then they wouldn't, and then things were stable and then they weren't. And so that kind of shaped a lot of, again, my young adult life, and just trying to do it on my own and toughing through it and not sharing with anybody and keeping things kind of silent.
I grew up with a single mom, lived with grandmother. Grandmother largely raised me. My mom was working incredibly hard trying to provide for the family. So that's basically how we grew up. Truly thankful to God for my stepdad that came in, when I was about 11. But up until that point, mostly an absent dad. He was kind of in and out of the picture for a long time. And that's a whole nother story. But basically grew up with mom and then a stepdad eventually. For our family specifically, and we've got 2 kids. We've got an almost 13-year-old and then a 9-year-old little boy. And oh my gosh, they are polar opposites, as most siblings are. And we'll get into that.
That's cool. So, tell us about the kids a little bit, or them. Tell them about the kids.
Where to
I know
begin?
your kids.
So our daughter that's about to be 13 is she is a rule follower to a T. If she deviates from a rule, she will come tell me immediately. What a blessing. It can also be, it's like, it's okay. You had, 4 more minutes of TV. Everything's fine, right? That's our daughter. Our son, we call him our Sour Patch Kid because first he's sour and then he's sweet. He pushes the boundaries a little bit, and John will tell a story about one of his favorite things is my son looked up at it as an 8-year-old and was like, life is hard. I'm like, you have no idea. That kind of sums up Bennett. He's got a little bit of a tough outer shell, but he's super sweet.
Anything you want to ask at this point? You're free to
No, I'm good.
ask whatever you want. I brought notes, but I didn't share them soon enough, so I was a jerk. So, all right. So, how'd you guys meet? Because John from Texas,
Yep.
Katie, North Carolina. By the way, where's your dad from?
So my dad was born outside of Kiev in Ukraine,
Okay,
and then when
yeah.
he immigrated, he lived in Manhattan in New York City.
Cool. So, I just think that's neat, like, especially with, the fact that Ukraine's been in the news a lot over the last few years.
That's where I get my stubbornness. You notice Ukrainians have not stopped fighting.
Yeah.
That's, they're tough people.
Yeah. Yeah, apparently so. I mean, they've stood up to Russia pretty successfully. So how'd you guys meet?
So I mentioned, my dad was enlisted and taking care of a family of 5. We didn't have a whole lot of extra money growing up. My older sister went to West Point, to the Army Military Academy. I went to the Air Force Academy. And so that's where John and I met. So we were finishing our freshman year, going into our sophomore year, and we shuffled into the same squadron and met at a squadron barbecue over the summer.
It was all sparks and afterburners from there, huh?
I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll get to that.
So what were some, I'm sure dating in the Air Force Academy comes with a lot of, I'm sure it's normal in a lot of ways, like it's college kind of, but it's also the military. So what are some meaningful experiences that you had dating? Like what are some maybe favorite dates or memories about each other, and how did you nurture your relationship in those early days?
To be honest, it was incredibly challenging having a relationship in the Air Force Academy is kind of a suffocating environment anyway. You know, the doors are always open. People are completely in your business all the time. So it's a little bit of a nuanced environment anyway. It's nothing like a civilian college. But as he was asking the question, one thing came to mind. I asked Katie, I said, hey, what's your dream date? We were going on a quick trip. I think it was spring break. We were going to California. I go, what's your dream date? I'm going to take you back to where I was born. This is going to be a cool trip. And she goes, what was it, lasagna and a horseback ride on the beach. And I remember thinking as a college kid, I got this. So we get to California, and I think we were doing the horseback riding first. So I show up in this place, and we get saddled up. And this is 100% truth. And we go out there, and as we start the ride, my horse stops, poops on her leg, on the horse, and I thought, this is not good. This is not going well. We knew each other pretty well, but, you know, it's been dating a few months. I turned, a couple steps forward. This isn't a long horseback ride. And I turn around, and she's screaming, crying, and she's on the side of the saddle. The whole saddle has tipped off.
Shifted, and
Yeah.
I fell off the side of the horse into
so-
the poop.
So, like, things are just rapidly unraveling. And this is a guided tour, and I thought, oh, my goodness, I got to pull this together. She's going to think I'm terrible. So we go, and things start to improve, and we're, wandering down the beach, and it's a beautiful evening. Santa Barbara, that whole area is incredible, and we're wandering down the beach, and we get to the turnaround point, and there's a dying seal in just agony on the beach at our turnaround point. And I thought, no way. And he's just, like, making every sound a dying seal would make. And I was like, I remember thinking, I was like, God, really? Maybe it's not the one. So now she's tearing up because she's fallen off the horse. She's tearing up because the seal. Somebody needs to do something about the seal.
And she's been pooped on.
And she's been pooped on, and she's with me. So anyway, we make it back. And so I will never forget the conversation over a lasagna dinner. Thankfully, that went fine. And I remember thinking, there are so many life lessons out of that one story. Like you can have this manifestation of what you think perfect is, and it just goes completely derailed. We've learned a lot of those lessons, and I'm sure we'll kind of take a deep dive into them. But yeah, that's the one that comes to mind.
So I was going to share our very first date, and at the Academy, Labor Day weekend is Parents' Day weekend, and so my family had come out for a couple of days and left early, and John had seen that I signed back into the squadron and invited me out with his entire family. So our first date, I'm with him, his younger brother's 5, his sister's 7, and we did a picnic at Garden of the Gods because the Air Force Academy is in Colorado Springs. And I will, to you ladies, I will tell you how I saw him interact with his parents and with his younger brother and sister. That for me was kind of what was like, this is a really special man because he has a very genuine, authentic, kind relationship with his parents. You could tell there was a lot of respect. He genuinely liked his brother and sister. He was genuinely kind and giving. And so, we joke like my first date, I met his entire family, but I actually thought that was a neat window into who he is and the things he values. And I can't say my dad did everything right, but his best qualities I saw in John that day. And so that's kind of what started the journey, at least for me, of just seeing like, hey, this is a quality guy who cares about his family very deeply. And I was hooked. I was hooked from that day on.
I feel like I have to quick pile on. On that same date, my sister dined me out. We were sitting there, and I don't know why GPA came up, but Katie was in the top 10%, and I was in the bottom 10%. But during that date, she had no idea that I had a 215, and it came up, and I said, well, I've got a strong 215. I'm really, I'm going for that 225. And she goes, no, you're not. You're one of those 4.0 guys that jokes about a 215. And my sister looks over and goes, no, he's one of those 215 guys that jokes about a 2.15. And I just remember being like, well, hopefully she doesn't just ditch me after this. But anyway, humbling.
The only thing I was going to add about dating in general is it's so fun to learn together. A lot of our dates, we've tried to do new things together. Being in the military, we don't always get a ton of leave, and so in between moving, that's kind of where you can take big chunks of leave. One of my favorite moments or weeks with John was going to like a paramotoring course in California in between our move from Alaska to Hawaii. Ava was literally 14 months old, so she was on the side of an airfield, like in a pack and play, and just watching us learn together. And I really just feel like that's a very bonding thing. So whether it's cooking classes or, I don't know. Some of our date, like he took me learning how to glass blow. I only took one class. I was terrible at it, but I had a lot of fun, new foods, new skill sets, that kind of thing. Like those have been some of our favorite dates.
That's cool. Would you like to answer that question about favorite memories or dates or specific things? Or this is a good opportunity for you to throw me under the bus. So
I mean, I don't have a real serious answer. Can I say a funny one?
yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I will say I've never gotten you pooped on. So
true.
that's pretty good. Have you
It's for
guys
the
ever been
kids.
horseback riding since then?
For Ava's birthday.
Oh, wow.
We went for her birthday once.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Katie avoids the horses now. Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Avoid.
So
I mean, I was going to say one thing in college. I grew up in Florida, if you don't know. And so I was like 12 hours from home and my family. And so we kind of joked that we would go to Walmart on a date. But it was because we needed to get groceries, but it was a way to spend time together. I paid a lot of my way through school. And so I was working or studying. I was at school to do really well. Maybe he was not.
I was.
But the cool thing was, since my family was so far away, on the weekends, as we had been dating more, he would take me back to where his family lived, and we would stay with his grandparents. And I just remember sitting around like the kitchen table and just getting to know them and like having fun. Like I felt immediately part of the family, which was great because I was so far away from my family. And so, like Katie said, it's really important to see how their family interacts together, because truly you're marrying into the family, and so that will be a part of your lives. And so you want in-laws that you love and that you can care for, because those will be the people, 20, 30 years into your marriage where we're sitting, and those are the people we're taking care of now. So
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. My family, my grandpa on the Sunday morning, the first time I took Lindsay home, looked at me and said, "Son, if you let her get away, you're an idiot." And I said, "Oh, no, I won't go into that." But, so I didn't let her get away. I'm still an idiot, but that's okay. So what role did faith have early on in your marriage? Like, what did that look like?
I guess just to be extraordinarily candid. Fortunately, I found God at 13. I went to summer camp, got saved, needed God desperately for 1,000 reasons, but I was in a really dark place, going through extreme anxiety, depression. It was awful. On medication for a period of time, and then so grateful that through God's grace, helping me through that entire thing. Through high school, faith was incredibly strong, and then it started to taper off as I went off to college. And so I say all that to say our whole relationship was not teed up with God at the center. And I will say it, I'm going to tell it 1,000 times. We did it completely wrong. And that's kind of what I was alluding to, was that we got married in a church. We talked about faith. And now, even in retrospect, looking at our relationship and looking at our faith, it's hard to imagine 17 years without sharing the gospel with Katie. We dated for years before that. So, so you look around and you go, how did 20 years plus years go by and you're best friend and you don't share the gospel? Short answer is, I don't know. There's a lot of things that creep into that. And so the reason I say that is because while we got married in a church and we went to premarital counseling, it was extraordinarily helpful. We didn't step off in marriage on the right foot, equally yoked, and with God as our cornerstone. So as I kind of tee that up to say, when we got married, it was incredibly challenging. It was challenging for a number of reasons, but it was challenging because going into the military is tough. Being separated for long periods of time is tough. All those things are challenging, but that's how our marriage started. And so I look back, and it's by the grace of God that He held us together through those incredibly challenging times. One of the things, later on that we came to realize is really, marriage is the dying to self too. You're sacrificing for one another, and in that sacrifice, you will start to accept things that maybe you found irritating once before, and you start to live together and grow. Well, when you separate for 12 or 18 months like we did for training, not separate as far as marriage, but go different ways, you come back together, and it's incredibly tough. It's incredibly tough to merge back those worlds. So I said a lot there, but the reason I'm providing the context is because if I could do it all over again, I would implore anybody, there's no other way to do it other than having faith as the bedrock foundation of any relationship. And I so desperately wish I could go back in time and go, hey, Katie, let me just share the gospel with you. It's my best friend. So anyway, I kind of, I said a lot, but that's kind of how our faith and our marriage started.
Yeah, and the Bible's, pretty clear, when you read Ephesians, chapter 5. One of our favorite books is Love and Respect. I highly recommend you read it. We read it when we were on rocky ground, so read it when you're on good ground so you can learn the lessons, not when you desperately are needing it and trying to build back. But to his point, pretty overbearing father with a pretty aggressive conflict style, and that was me, right? Like, I came away and I was, they ever hear like too many chiefs and not enough Indians? In a household, there's not harmony and peace when you have two people who were strong-willed and not guided by the Holy Spirit. And that was such a revelational thing for me once I became saved in 2022, was just the Holy Spirit is not leading us in two separate directions. So when we come to a conversation and we see it very, very differently, we need to pray. We need to stop on it and pray. And sometimes the Holy Spirit has led us down John's path. Sometimes it's been my path, and sometimes it's been path C that neither one of us saw until we really prayed for the discernment and had conversations that, were not emotion-filled, but, really trying to get to both of our hearts on, like, what God is leading us to do instead of what we want to do. And that has made our marriage and the harmony and peace in our home tenfold than what it ever was prior to making God the center and having Him help lead those conversations. And so admittedly so, I will admit that, right? And I'm, a female in a male-dominated career field that has to make decisions all the time as an officer and very directive and having to get things done. And right, like I'm type A and I'm yellow personality, if you've ever taken the color personality test, where it's like very task-oriented. And people aren't tasks, right? Kids are not tasks. They have their own personalities, and we have our own personalities, and it's messy, but it's beautiful at the same time. And so I just think when God became the center, we got such clarity in our relationship, and I stopped trying to do His role, frankly, right? As the male, as the leader of our household, or spiritual leader, I stopped trying to do his job, and imagine that. There was a lot more harmony in the home after that. And I trust John because even though he's been the head of our household, he, of course, asks me my opinion about everything, so it's not like he's stopped seeking my counsel or whatnot. It's just I don't fight him for that role like I did before because, again, Ukrainian, very stubborn. And so, yeah, I wish we could say the first 17 years there was a lot of harmony. There wasn't. And I think that's confusing for kids, too. And I'm just glad that at least, God made the change in our family's lives when He did, because now it's just not him and I's relationship, but it's really trying to set the family up as one that serves the Lord.
Yeah. And quick pile on. I hope we don't paint this terrible negative light of the first 17 years, because that was obviously not the intent. But I think it's important, and it's important to see the distinction. We live both sides, and how one side just crumbles in so many ways when things are above God in the priority list. And oh, by the way, our priorities weren't aligned. And so those are the things. And so while it sounds like this, terrible 17 years. It wasn't a terrible 17 years. It just wasn't living and doing things God's way. And then, like she said, the harmony that occurred and the love, joy, and peace that really filled our family after that. I wish I could put it out here and show you the dichotomy because it's so distinct. And that's really what we want to make sure that, we're able to share with people now.
Yeah.
Well, the only thing I was going to add is I think, when you start growing in your faith, right, you're really having to be self-reflective on what your idols are. We have been always very career-oriented to a point where it was driving a wedge in the family, right? And so a career can be an idol, right? Your spouse can be an idol too, right? So, you got to put the right place to everything. And so, at least for our family, I do think a lot of the decisions that were, you give everything you have to the job, and then you come home, and when kids enter the picture, you give everything to the kids, and then what's little left is what your spouse gets. And, that's complete wrong order, right? And so when kids start entering the picture, you have to fight for that time for your spouse. They are your top priority. And, of course, you love your kids and you serve your kids, but not before giving your best to your spouse. They deserve that. They've earned that. And that wasn't always the case, right? Just with two busy career fields. So I will say that.
Yeah, so both John and Katie, both in the Air Force. And so, Linz, I'm going to have you kind of fill in some things about your your career, jobs, things like that too, because a lot of people don't know those things. So, but why don't you go ahead first and kind of tell them what are some of the things that you have done and what you're doing now and things like that.
Okay. So I was raised in a home where my dad worked really hard and my mom worked really hard, and that was always really important to me, is to work really hard. It didn't matter what. Sorry, my dad's been sick. But I went to college, and a professor saw something in me with photography and handed me a camera one weekend, and I just took pictures, and I loved it. And so my background, as far as storytelling and photography, has always been super important to me. And so the Lord has given several different platforms to use that and serve that for kingdom work and traveling, and so I really do enjoy that. And but I always wanted to be a mom. And so when we got pregnant with Nolan, I stepped down from my part-time job. I had been working as a photographer at a couple different newspapers. I've worked in Tennessee and then a smaller newspaper when we were called to Albion, Illinois. But I was working as a TA, a teacher's assistant at a local elementary school, and I loved it. It was great. Coaching volleyball, just kind of living the life. John was a pastor. I guess you kind of want me to share my salvation story with
Sure,
us?
yeah.
Okay. So with that, we got pregnant with Nolan. I knew I was going to stay home, and I was so excited about that. I've just really always wanted to be a mom. And we had Nolan. I was home. And then as far as salvation story goes with that, I grew up in a home that they believed it was important that we were at church. My parents didn't model a lot of Bible reading or discipleship. We would pray before we eat, but beyond that, I don't remember too many spiritual conversations with my parents. And so went to a Christian school. I went to First Baptist Orlando, which is set up very much like here at FBCO. Except for it's Orlando,
10
not
times bigger.
O'Fallon, but
Yeah.
yeah. And so Christian school, and went to a Christian college, Union University in Jackson, Tennessee. But I'd struggled with some doubt and just knowing Christ, and did I really know him? My grandmother was a big person of faith in my life, just always super encouraging. She would be the one I would call in times of discouragement or just to talk to somebody. And so one Sunday morning after we had had Nolan, I remember very vividly sitting in our living room in Albion, and I said, Lord, I just need an answer on this. If I don't truly know you, this has got to kind of be the end of it, because I struggled back and forth. Like, do I really know the Lord? Am I following him? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? And so John's a pastor at this time, and he was preaching out of Ezekiel, is it 35, 36? But it talks about the Lord saying, I will take your heart of stone and give you a heart of flesh. And it was like the Holy Spirit convicted and was like, it's not about what you do. It's about the fact that what Christ did, and that the Lord holds my salvation. It was nothing to do with me. And so we reached out to a pastor friend because John got home. He's like, what's wrong? I was like, I don't think I'm a believer. Again, mind you, he's a pastor at this point, so this is creating a lot of issues. Or I thought, worry on my part. I guess I was more concerned. And so we reached out to our pastor friend, and he said, read John and read 1 John. And so throughout that week, just really felt the conviction of the Holy Spirit that I was not saved, and that if I had died, I got really sick with Nolan when we had him too, that I believe I probably would be separated from Christ. And so within that week, I remember just hitting the floor and just saying, Lord, I don't know you, but I want to know you, and I know that I don't hold my salvation, but you do. It's not about what I do. It's about the salvation that Christ would bring through death on a cross, and that he's alive. And so I think with that and staying home, kind of getting to live that dream job that I always wanted, I loved it. It was great. We had Mar. We did lose a baby in between Nolan and Marley. And so we've walked through some hard things, and we are walking in hard things, but the Lord is faithful. And I would say with that too, as far as jobs and things that I do, sometimes I feel like I look back and I've had different jobs along the way where I can't say I've been somewhere for 20 years or I've been a teacher for 20 years. And so I would encourage you with that, though, is to remember that the Lord is in control. And no matter where he's called you for that season, serve faithfully, for that season.
Yeah, so John and Katie are career Air Force people. I'm a long-term pastor. I've been a pastor for 18 years. Yeah, nice. And then, Lindsay's had multiple different kinds of jobs, and a lot of you guys know what that's like, where you maybe in college you thought you were headed one direction and you went another, or you got out of college, or you didn't go to college and you had a career and then there was a change, and you just feel like there's a lot of change. Like, she can identify a lot with that, and so I think that's a neat thing about her life and her testimony, for those of you guys who are going through a lot of uncertainty or consistent life change. She's a person that can really understand that, and so I think that's cool. So for you guys, John, you mentioned, first of all, both Air Force pilots. Katie, just brief snapshot of what you flew, kind of rank what you've done in the Air Force. You're still in.
Yeah.
For now.
Final few months. So retire 1st of July. Pretty excited about that. We started off as pilot training instructors, so went through pilot training, and then we both stayed on instructors. And then I flew the C-17, which maybe you know from the Transformers movie. And then the C-37, which is a blue and white Gulfstream that did executive airlift, so toting around our general officers and civilian military leadership.
Yeah, cool.
We both started in pilot training. It was the one way we could stay together, and so we actually both taught in Oklahoma. We lived there for 5 years. That's crazy. That was that long ago. But anyway, we taught pilot training, and then that's kind of what I was talking about, that separation. We went different ways for training. So Katie went to, I think it was Altus, Oklahoma for C-17s. and I went to Florida for F-22s and kind of bounced between F-16s and F-22s, if you're familiar. There were only so many places we could go, so after that, they sent us to Alaska. So we actually did 4 years in Alaska and then 10 years in Hawaii, and then bounced around kind of all over Hawaii doing tours there.
Cool. And John just finished, just retired, right?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, so he's an old retired guy now.
Hey, thanks.
And Katie, you're finishing up, just a few months left, and you're retiring, so that's pretty, it's pretty awesome. I'm super thankful.
Thank you.
Super thankful for both of you, but for those careers. And what I think you guys are slow to share, I think is a very important part of your testimony, is that you're both leaders in your fields. Like as pilots in the Air Force, you're not just like, you're not the bottom of the rung people. Like you're leaders, and so I think that's super amazing as well. Just the way that God has used you both, and I think that can come with its own challenges that maybe we'll get to in a minute. Maybe we won't have time, I don't know. But we talked about early in your marriage, Faith, like I met y'all 2 years ago, and the first time we met, I remember, Katie, you said something like, yeah, I've been a Christian for a year. And I was like, yeah, I think I heard that wrong. Okay, because seriously, when I first met them, I went, these people need to be life group leaders right now, like right now. And so obviously you're at a different place than you were at one point where faith didn't hold a high priority. Tell us, kind of give us the shortish version of how do you get from where you were to where you are in your walk with Christ?
Suffering for me, truly. I think I told you, through the grace of God, we have walked a lot of marital challenges. We had some big challenges reintegrating after a deployment in 2022. And that's when, at least for me, I literally felt like I couldn't do it on my own. I finally had the epiphany of I've exhausted all of my own abilities to control the situation, to be able to heal hurts. I couldn't do it. And God has been so faithful. And walking through what I would say is probably the darkest season of our marriage. And, I don't know how many of you listen to country. Country could be a little cheesy, but there's this one line that goes, I'm having to learn how to crawl after learning how to walk. And that's how I felt, truly, right? And it's a little bit, Christ is the perfect example of humility, and that was just a season that was so apparent that, Lindsay just talked about the softening of her heart, where I realized how hard of a heart I had and had brought a lot of challenges in our marriage, and so it was through that suffering and just realizing I couldn't do it on my own, and I wasn't going to be able to make this work on my own. God just opened up a pathway, and has been that guiding light for us. I'm not going to say it's been easy, since then, but I think that surrendering in that moment and feeling God's grace and mercy and having the moments of peace truly, right, where we read like peace that passes our understanding. I know exactly what that means. I have felt that peace in the middle of so much chaos. We sang about it tonight, just being that firm rock. And I hate to say it, but with my personality and how like stubborn and tough and strong-willed, like that's how God had to bring me to him. He had to break me. I broke myself, really, but it was in that brokenness, truly, that I found Christ. I wish it wasn't that story, but I think it's just kind of how life is. It's through things that don't go well and that adversity where we feel demoralized and broken and not worthy and all of those things, where God just picks you up and shows you your value and your worth, and that you can be redeemed when you don't feel like you deserve it. And so truly, I feel like in that's been life-changing for me, starting in 2022. But it was definitely starting out of that brokenness.
Yep, 2022 was a horrible year. Anytime somebody's deployed, there's the stress of the deployment, and then the other person staying home carries the weight. The kids, I had 3 hours of driving in the morning, morning and afternoon combined. It was 3 hours plus a full day of work and flying and everything else. And so physically and emotionally exhausted. And then I had my third friend in a couple years, dear friend, pass away in the middle of it. And so I was in a really terrible, dark place, as was Katie. And so, but during that time, once we were trying to work through it, my boss walked up to me and he just goes, I was just a mess in his office. He's like, "Hey, I really think you should come to church with me on Sunday." And I remember thinking to myself, I'm like, "Yeah, sure, whatever, let's do this." At this juncture, you're kind of at that point of quitting. So we go to church, and a few days later we go to small group. Their small groups are on Wednesday night, and I share this because I didn't know the power of having somebody another couple to look up to and to talk to. That's just never been a thing. I thought my parents modeled a great marriage, and turns out they were imperfect. But that Wednesday night, there was a guy that shows up, and a dear friend, and I don't want to put him on a pedestal, but I'm going to put him on a pedestal a little bit. They showed up, they moved to Hawaii, and he's sharing his story. He had been a pastor for 18 years out of California. And he goes, my wife and I just felt like it was time to change. It was time to close this chapter, and God wanted something new. So we sold everything. He called a whole bunch of pastor friends and said, "Where am I going?" And the one person that flew out that needed his help was from Hawaii, and flew out to him in California and said, "I need you in Hawaii." So the same week, we both show up in this small group, and we're sitting across from each other, and it was literally instant friends. And he goes, "I don't know why, but I feel like I moved here to help you." And not even knowing that we're in our darkest place of all time. He took us to the side and goes, "Hey, I'm going to disciple you. And it's a 14-week program, but if it takes 40 weeks, that's totally fine. I think it took us 36 weeks to graduate."
Broke the record at the church for
yeah.
longest discipleship program, yeah. Because
But
half the time he was couples counseling.
Yeah, he'd be like, he would push the Bible aside and he goes, "Okay, we're not even going to go over the lesson. We need to really get to the nuts and bolts." So I share that for a number of reasons. That was our turning point, and that was the moment that God got hold of us. And the crazy thing is, for years, I always felt like, "Hey, God, I went sideways somewhere. I don't know the way back, but I'm desperate for the way back. And I don't know how to get there. I know I'm not leading my family. I have no idea. I'm surrounded by friends that are not Christians, they're not believers, doing all the wrong things." And it went through, like Katie said, that massive amount of suffering, and he turned the corner and brought this group of men that all of a sudden showed up in my life, and only God could put these pieces together, and completely turned our family around. I still look back and I go, "I don't know, God, how you did that. But I'm eternally grateful." Subsequently, our daughter, Katie gets saved, our daughter gets saved, and then January 1st of this year, our son was saved. And so I share all that to say our marriage before, the priorities were completely mixed up, and we're doing things of the world. When God stepped in, it completely right-sided everything, and changed so drastically. And so Kyle to this day is a dear friend, but he calls us, and he's still, he's kind of that eternal teacher, and we're super grateful for that.
I think one of the things that we got rebuked. I mean, we got rebuked during our discipleship lessons, and I have never had a true friend, call me out and speak truth into me. And so if you can be that for each other, if you can, grow in that role, you literally could save someone's life and trajectory, their eternity, right? Because that's where it began for us, where we just open our eyes to all these things that we just were not living in truth, and it hurt. It hurt to hear, and it was part of the sanctification process for us, certainly. And it was like a light bulb went off of like, he loves us so much, he's going to tell us the hard things that we need to hear. And that was really, it was just a great role model. And I guess I would just say, we never thought we needed like mentors or, another couple to look up to or come to, because you're too prideful. I don't need that, and it's like, oh no, but we did, even after 17 years of marriage, we still did. So that was God's timing.
So just a friend that felt called to move to Hawaii and he didn't know
Just to
why.
fix us.
Is anybody else feeling like they might be called to Hawaii? Just need to explore that. No?
Yes.
No? I'm
funny.
really surprised. I figured everyone would want to explore that calling. But, okay, so I love your story. I love, there's so many things we could talk about and places we want to go. By the way, I didn't train you on the use of the microphones, much less give you a microphone. Make sure you hold that thing up close to your mouth. So we're good. So the number one question that our guys ask, number one, all the time, how can men prepare to be spiritual leaders? So, girls, I have a question for you. What do you think spiritual leadership looks like? Like in a man, what do you kind of long for, hunger for your husband to be as a spiritual leader? And that doesn't, Katie, I know everything that John does is great, and everything that I do is not. And I'm just super aware of that. So I'm open to all the frankness that you want to bring to this moment. But really, I want to know, like, what is spiritual leadership? What's it look like, and what are you wanting in a spiritual leader as a lady? What are you looking for in a man as a spiritual leader? That make sense?
So again, Ephesians is pretty clear about how husbands should love their wives, right? Love your wives like Christ loves his church, his body. And so I feel like the thing that made me really comfortable in submitting to John, letting him have the headship, if you will, not letting him, but like supporting him in his role, was the fact that he built trust with me through sacrificial actions. Like I really, truly feel John is always thinking about the kids and I first. I think if you are cultivating a household where your partner feels seen and loved, and they know that their heart is one for you, and they're showing through, you probably read the 5 love languages. John's is an acts guy. I'm a time spent person. He receives love through gifts. That doesn't mean as much to me, but his acts of service really show me that this is a man that is for me and for our children. And then also in my moments of anxiety and weakness and stress, of which has been a lot lately. I mean, I was crying to him the other night. Just obviously we're in the middle of a conflict, and we lost an aircraft and 6 airmen last week. And war is ugly, but and he just always points me back to God. It's just always pointing me in that direction back to God, because that's where peace is found and that's where hope is found. And so those have been things that have been where he's really stepping up as that leader in our household.
And I would echo
You're good.
with Ephesians 5:2. I mean, it says, as Christ loved the church, gave his life up for her. And so I think in John being a spiritual leader, knowing that he loves me and the kids and would do anything for us. And I know that because he loves Christ first. And so that's always been something I've admired. There's a quote, I don't remember. It has something to do with when he was preaching. It's like, they don't need to hear what I have to say. They need to hear what the Bible has to say.
Yeah.
And to me, that's him. And so I feel like in being a leader with love, but I also go to him for wisdom. As we're making decisions or doing things, I feel very open, to share my ideas. But I also know too, like, the Lord has led him to lead. And so that way, in some ways, girls, is kind of freeing because, like, we talk about it and make a decision, but, that final often rests on his shoulders, which I know carries a lot of weight. But in that, if we respect and allow those things, I feel like their leadership can shine. And I think, too, in supporting him with kids down the way, honoring what he says. Like, hey, well, what did Dad say? We kind of have a joke that the kids, say, well, what did Mom say? But if you really, girls, if you're really going to support your husband in that, it's really important that you stand by whatever he says. And two, married or not, one way to honor him as a spiritual leader is to always speak highly of him. I mean, I have some really close friends, but we still don't get together and talk about our husbands. And I think that's a way, as a wife, I think that submission is coming next, but I feel like that's a way to honor him whether he hears it or not.
So, what you guys are describing as spiritual leadership, so I didn't have a dad who's a spiritual leader in the home, and so the whole idea of being a spiritual leader just seems so much bigger than anything that I was ever capable of even understanding, much less doing. Do you feel like, can you identify with that any, John?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, when you said you didn't have a spiritual leader in the household, like, yep, 100%. I didn't know what it looked like, so I didn't know what right looked like. And that's where I feel like God brought those people like Kyle, the pastor I was telling you about out of Hawaii, into my life to go, hey, this is what spiritual leadership looks like. This is what leadership of your family looks like, and this is how you do it God's way. And just the mountains that I learned out of that. And oh, by the way, reading some wonderful Christian books. We started off slowly, and I go, look at this, Katie. I was like, there's so much goodness in these books. We're 40 years old, and all of a sudden you're going, where were these books? Well, they've been around, since we were kids, turns out.
Yeah, so, but, to hear you talk, it sounds like much of the time being a spiritual leader isn't about the big, huge things. It's not so much the massive decisions. It's kind of the everyday sorts of things.
The older I get, I feel like the small daily routines in what we're doing make it the big things. Like, those are the routines that you're establishing with Bible reading and prayer, going about your day. They might not seem like big things, but at the time, it's like a seed growing, right? You don't know what's happening underneath, but the Lord is watering through truth and through prayer and community. And he's growing something in us. And that's the thing. Like, that's the big thing that we think about, but it's always the small little routines.
Cool. So, John, I guess for all three of you, what are some things that men can do to prepare to be spiritual leaders? Like, what, for a lot of these guys aren't married. There's a few here that are, a couple that are very newly married. And so, regardless of where they're at right now, they're not quite as far along in marriage as we are. So we've been at this just a little longer. So what can these guys do to prepare to be spiritual leaders in their homes?
You know, if I could go back and talk to my younger self, we probably don't have time to cover everything. But one of the things I desperately wish, like I had talked about earlier, is that, you know, one, I had prepared to have that conversation, you know, with somebody I'm dating, and, you know, ultimately became my fiance. I wish I had been bold enough to have those conversations and to ensure that we were equally yoked. I couldn't have really probably articulated what I just said. I probably didn't have the capacity at that time. My faith was so young. And so, you know, that discipleship that took us exceedingly long time, those are all the things that I know prepared me to, not only for a relationship, but life as a parent. There's so many lessons that you learn out of that, and the one as I was listening to you, is you kind of talking about what do you cultivate? You have to know how to forgive. To enter into a relationship or be a parent, I was the person that would remember all the wrongs, and I was even-keeled until I just explode. But it was kind of a learned thing, and it's not the right thing. I didn't understand genuine forgiveness, and when you understand genuine forgiveness, then you will offer an apology, it will be sincere, or you will receive an apology and you will forgive right there. And then you will change. And so I can't encourage you enough, one, to talk to those that have been there, and walk the path in both the good times and the terrible. And like I said, going through those discipleship and ensuring that you're both on the same sheet of music as you enter into a relationship is incredibly important.
Cool. Katie, Lindsay, is there anything that you guys would encourage our guys to do to prepare to be spiritual leaders?
I mean, the only other thing I would add would be, you know, if you don't have like a father figure that would have modeled it, then, and the same would be true for the girls. So seek it out. Like, it's important to build relationships with people outside your age range. That's really important because we're all at different seasons and we're learning. And so John and I have always had people in church that are years ahead of us, that we've hung out with and had fun with, gone to dinner with, and then people that are younger too. And so I would say, and ask them questions, you know, like, what is it like to get up and read your Bible every morning, or go to bed or read it before you go to bed? Like, ask those questions if you don't know. Like, you need somebody that can be that for you.
Admittedly so, it's still in my Audible. I'm only a couple chapters in, but there's a book our pastor in Hawaii recommended reading, and he says, I read it every year, and it talks about basically measuring your spiritual health, and it's just a book of accountability, and I think self-reflection is really, really important, right? Goal setting is important, and that goes in life, but that also comes in our spiritual walk, and so I downloaded it, and I'm, like I said, only a couple of chapters in, but I would say, being aware of how you're spending your time, what you're spending your time on. We took a Bible study class with, this past session on Wednesdays about how to disciple kids in a fast-paced world, and there's so many opportunities for talking about Scripture and what God's teaching us. If you, right, like they talk about be slow to speak, if you just listen and ask open-ended questions with the people in your lives, and look for those opportunities just to breathe into them. Our kids go to FBA, and we're so grateful they're at a school where there's a class to help build that foundation, but asking them about, what they're reading and diving deep into it. And we're a family that loves road trips. There's nothing better than being stuck in the car with each other for 10 hours, right? I mean, there's that car time, I feel like, just as parents trying to breathe into our kids, into each other, and having those conversations and building in time for that. You know, our kids will never be the ones that are Division I athletes because we refuse to put them in the sports where it rules the family's life. You know, like we are very deliberate about how we spend our time. And we've had to be self-reflective sometimes and throttle things back after it feels like it's taken a little bit too much control. And so I think that self-reflection is really helpful. And yeah.
I like how she said that's the reason they won't be D1 athletes.
Also, our genetics is the
Thank
other
you.
reason
Yeah.
why they won't be D1 athletes.
But man, they could fly a plane.
Well, they were-
Okay, so you guys good to keep going for a little bit? Because there's another side to this. Like we've talked about male spiritual leadership, but let's talk about what it means as a lady to live in submission to that leadership, because that's really hard. It's very countercultural. And in some ways, it's probably very counterintuitive. I think about, Katie, you're a leader. Like you're a leader of people, so you're good at that. You're a type A person. You're not like it's probably not super intuitive, and I would bet that for most ladies, it's just not super intuitive. So, what does it look like, and really just all three of you, what does it look like to be a woman who submits to her husband's leadership without feeling like she has to check her ideas and her will and her hopes and her dreams at the door? Does that make sense? And then, like, John, what's meaningful for you in Katie's submission to you? So that'll help with that.
Do you want me, or do you want to answer? Okay. I mean, I would say first, in Genesis, God created Eve to be a helper to Adam. And so in the last few years, I've really focused in on that word a little bit more. Like, what does that mean for me? Like, I help. That doesn't mean I'm in charge. It doesn't mean that my ideas aren't important, because they are. We've always looked at ministry as a team, but it does also mean that my life has to be surrendered to Christ. And then it's much easier to submit to John, if that makes sense, because I know that he loves the Lord and that he is seeking him. And if I'm obeying the Lord and seeking him, then it's just so much easier. It was not easier at the beginning as we have grown in our relationships with Christ separately and together. It is. It's like two rocks, and you have to give up of yourself, die to self, and that is hard. By no means are we smooth stones, but it's a process, and it's together. And I think making sure, like, I'm aligned with Christ, it makes it a lot easier to fall in submission and be that helper.
Yeah, I echo that. Absolutely. You know how we feel good when we do something good for someone else? Like, God has designed that within us. And I feel like it's the same thing. When you experience that harmony in your house, when your husband feels respected, if you're not going to read Love and Respect, at least Google this, and I have it on my phone right now. There's an acronym for men to show their wives love and for women to show their husbands respect. And it was like this light bulb went off when I read that book, because so often the way I would talk to John, even if not meaning to, was disrespectful, or he found disrespect, and then there was a disconnect in our relationship. And once it dawned on me that I have to honor and respect my husband in whatever the topic is that we're talking about,
and then quickly addressing it. And so we have done a much better job as we've gotten older and more mature in our marriage, obviously, when he'd say, hey, I feel disrespected the way you said this. And then it's like, oh, well, that's my cue. Not what I intended. I'm so sorry you feel disrespected. Let me try again. And then having the conversation. And we were just very quick. And I have to chuckle because I remember in one fight we were just not seeing eye to eye. And he's like, I'm gonna go upstairs, get a little bit of space. And he leaves, and then he comes back and he goes, but I still love you with all my heart. And then he goes back out the room. And I was like, because that's all I really wanted to hear, right? Like, we weren't seeing eye to eye, but my husband loves me, and my husband knows that I respect him, and I have to show that through word and action. And it's just like it clicks and it works, and you're like, God, imagine that. When I'm living out the design for how you designed it, like, it works, and it just is easy, and we don't fight about anything anymore. Not anything, but like, generally speaking, we just never get to the point where it's really chaotic. And there were seasons, right, where I hate to admit it, like slamming doors and just really like dramatic things. And I never thought I was a dramatic person, but apparently I was. So I do recommend, COUPLE is the acronym for Love for Wives, and for men it was CHAIRS, and you'll just have to Google it. But this is what I'll just say for the men. C stands for conquest, appreciating his desire to work and achieve. H is for hierarchy, appreciating his desire to protect and provide. A, authority, appreciating his desire to serve and lead. I, insight, appreciating his desire to analyze and counsel. R, relationship, appreciating his desire for shoulder-to-shoulder friendship. And S, sexuality, appreciating his desire for sexual intimacy, right? Like, yes, like all of those things, when I seek to keep those things in mind, and I'm shoulder to shoulder with him when he's in his word shop, and I'm not super excited about what he's building, but he is, and he enjoys sharing it with me. Like, that's me showing him love and respect, and that pays dividends. And so I just, I think it goes hand in hand with being submissive and just showing that respect through
Is
love and
that
action.
Love and Respect by Dr. Emerson
Yes,
Agarix?
yes.
I probably didn't pronounce his name right. Sorry, Doc.
It's so good. It's a good
Cool.
book.
Anything you
Yeah,
got,
I was going to say, that book was life-changing for us. One, because we had read 0 books on what a relationship should be and how it works. But one of the statistics out of that book that I found fascinating was that men desire respect 85% of the time over love. So if you were to ask 100 men, 85 will say, I want respect over love. That doesn't mean I devalue love. It just means that I want respect more. Women are the exact opposite. And once we realized that, and oh, by the way, the Bible tells you that, it started to click for us that, hey, don't abandon. The crazy cycle occurs when she doesn't feel loved and I don't feel respected. And so what do you do in return? You start to rob the other person of that because you're trying to get back at them, and it goes round and round and round. So we didn't get that. And oh, by the way, it was the way God designed us. And once, like Katie said, if you fall in line with God's design, there's peace and harmony within the family. Part of that submission that we were chatting about, one of the things that Pastor Aaron actually shared with us, and it clicked with us too, was we had always struggled with, we're peacefully disagreeing about something. How do you get to a resolution? And Pastor Aaron, he goes, hey, the Holy Spirit's not going to lead you in 2 different directions. And we were really grateful for that advice, because in a relationship, you can find yourselves at a genuine crossroads of just, agree to disagree. But agree to disagree really isn't harmony and going the same direction. That's kind of what submission looks like in our household. We are equally yoked in that conversation, and our ideas are equally represented. And very rarely do we get to a place that she goes, hey, and she said it before, she goes, as head of the household, what do you think? And the whole family gets behind it. So those are pretty rare, but maybe once or twice.
One of the things that I've taken from that Ephesians 5 passage about husbands and wives, and I see it at work in your life. I heard it described one time that when the husband loves his wife as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her, when the husband loves his wife in that way, he's placing her on a pedestal. which kind of sounds like now he's down here and she's up here, but when she submits to him as Christ submits to or as the church submits to Christ, then she's placing him on a pedestal. So now they're not here anymore. Now they're eye to eye. They're on equal level, and they're higher than they were before. And then there's always that continual placing a person on a pedestal, like lifting them up. And when you do that mutually, you don't end up in a place where she's less important than him or he's less important than her. You end up at very equal places. And I love that about that passage, and I admire that in you guys and in your marriage. I'm super thankful for that. So, one of the questions we got was about conflict, and so do you guys ever get, like, do you ever have conflict in your house? Is there ever any conflict in the marriages on the stage?
Sometimes
You
family.
were quick to say yes.
Yeah, say for us, the last one was, yeah, I'll jump in. I don't know what the dynamics are with in-laws or family dynamics or anything else, right? I mean, the last one for us was, we're a military family. We lived halfway in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for so long. So if our family makes any attempt to be within a radius, like, I'm all about trying to see them. John had a race in Chattanooga, a triathlon, and was like, hey, your family kind of invited themselves. I really would like to keep this race. Just our family, it'd be the first race the kids are at, and I was like, what? You want me to uninvite my family who invited themselves? Like, we never get to see them. Like, it just didn't make sense, right? And so, again, fortunately, old Katie and John would have been, like, bickering, and, we probably would have gone to sleep angry and unresolved and all the things. And after that initial, like, just swapping of perspectives, it's like, you know what, let's pray on it, and I went to scripture where it talks, right, about two becoming one and cleaving and leaving your family. John is my family. And of course I love my extended family, but he asked so little, and this clearly was a request of his, and it was just like, God just turned the light bulb on, and it just made sense, right? And that was just an example of when there's tension sometimes between the immediate family and the extended family, which sometimes can be a pretty major conflict in a household. God just shone light very quickly, and I think, again, when you're not seeing eye to eye, immersing yourself in the Word and seeing what God's trying to speak through you and in you, but always doing it kindly, always doing it respectfully. Respectful is the big key there with conflict resolution. And that's very new and different because, like I said, my dad was a yeller. I've always been a yeller, right? And I very legalistic. I'll give you 20 different ways on why I'm right and try to, and it's like, that's not how you engage someone you love that you're trying to get to a good place together. So, yeah.
I just have to throw out, so everything she's saying, the conflict resolution was just night and day. So she came from a family that would berate you for 2 or 3 hours over an infraction within the family. My stepdad stepped into the role as stepdad, and he would actually, when I got in trouble, he would bring me a legal pad. He's the consummate businessman. And he would outline, and he'd have little boxes next to everything that I did, and these were the ramifications. And he'd have a signature for me and a signature for him, and it would be our contract. And it was so pragmatic. It was void of really kind of the love that you would expect from correction. But that's the only way he knew how to do it. And so I had contractual, behavior modification, and hers just looked different. So when we would get in an argument, I had no idea how to handle the way she was, and she had no idea how to handle mine as I'm sliding a contract over to her. It was just very different.
I can picture this. Katie's yelling, and John's going, "Where's my legal pad?" I can't find it.
Well, it's the same thing with parenting too, right? It's not just about behavior modification, it's about heart transformation.
Yeah.
Right? It's always getting to the heart of the problem. And oftentimes when we're not seeing, right, like you probably have had these conversations with siblings, friends, right? oftentimes what you're fighting about is not the issue. There is something underlying. There's a heart issue somewhere else. And so it's, again, being self-reflective of knowing, like, why am I having a hard time with this conversation? It's not just you, it's all these underlying factors, and being vulnerable in that and kind of doing, that self-assessment. And also with conflict resolution, I don't care if I legitimately don't think I did something wrong. If he apologizes, I will always apologize, because the truth is there is always something that I can take responsibility and accountability for.
Yeah.
So the beam in your eye, scripture, I really feel like if you can all eternalize that, if we're really being truthful, there's always something that we have to come to the table with when our partner is being vulnerable and asking for that forgiveness, and doing it in turn. And I think that served us well.
Yeah.
I was going to give one last thing on conflict resolution, and the reason I bring it up is because I see it as a massive issue today, and I share it as, while I'm saying it's a massive issue today, I was just as guilty, and I try not to be of it. Often when we're wronged, we feel like we're justified in the response, and so today, you'll see a response that is completely out of line, and that person feels justified in the response. In our marriage, we had the same thing. I perceive you wronged me or disrespected me, and therefore I am justified in my response. It couldn't be further from the truth, and it wasn't until somebody finally told us, he goes, hey, the two of you need to be staring at God always. That way, when the other one says something that wrongs you, all you have to say is ouch. And you go, hey, that hurt. You don't have to respond. You don't have to do anything. But those words of wisdom were so powerful, because it's not just relationship, it's not just kids, it's every friendship. And that was really groundbreaking for us, and it broke down a lot of barriers to go in life in general, and on my friendships and my relationship. You don't have to. You need to let go of the vindictiveness, and you need to just go, hey, I'm going to forgive that person.
It's really cool. So how do you guard against anger? What do you do? Because, it's an emotion. I think God gives us emotions. I think Jesus got angry. Clearly, he sat down and made a whip one day, and then he used it. There was anger at work. It was righteous anger, and because he's Jesus, he didn't do anything wrong with that anger. As couples, how can we guard against anger in our marriages, and in our broader relationships with friends, with coworkers, with whomever? How do we guard against anger? What can we do to fight back toward that tendency?
That's where I think your personal relationship with Christ is so important. That's where a lot of accountability comes from, and I just feel like reading scripture, repeating it, meditating on it, praying to God for long suffering. Is it still not? Am I the one that's the problem? I'm sorry, guys. I'm the problem. Wow, that is significantly louder. I'm sorry. I apologize this whole time. No, I just say scripture is so grounding. It's right. It's an anchor. It's the anchor that we need. God's very clear, about, again, not angering easily, being slow to speak. Because if you don't, hopefully you all acknowledge the power that you have when you speak and the words that you say. And if you're not parents yet, my gosh, we find ourselves saying things that we have to apologize for when you lose your patience. Your words are powerful, and they can pierce like a knife, but they can also be so uplifting and encouraging. Yes. And for the people that we love, which should be everybody, second commandment, right? Yeah. Like, we really have to be deliberate in how we use that. So we cannot be guided. And I will be the first one to tell you, I don't know if you've ever had a counselor. We've actually gone to counselors, and after session 2, switched, because they try to validate every feeling that we had. And we're like, wow, this is not healthy. Yeah. John and I look at feelings as a litmus test,
right? It's giving us information about, the environment we're in and, factors around that we need to consider, like what's going on under the surface, but we cannot be guided by feelings. And it is such a lie that you hear in culture today constantly, right? Like being righteously justified because of the anger I have towards this group of people or this policy or whatever else. And it couldn't be further from the truth. And so I really do feel like in a marriage, right, when you probably, in our discipleship, I remember Kyle saying it's like a triangle, John and Katie and God's at the top of the triangle, and as you're closer in your relationship, you naturally get closer to each other, and it guides and shapes your interactions naturally. So I'd say, yeah, take a breath, find those verses that ground you and anchor you before you speak.
Anything else?
We had somebody tell us, get curious, not furious. And when they told us, I just kind of chuckled. And the more I reflected on it, it really probably applies the most to kids. Because hopefully the dialogue between, significant other is going to be a little more productive. But kids are notorious for, they can test every ounce of your patience, right? And the wonderful thing about those words was, it's not that they're doing anything typically with malintent, but there's maybe something in the background, and you have no idea the context until you're inquisitive. And I think it applies in friendships, it applies in relationships, like I said.
I would say too, with just like the feeling of anger, I think a lot of times back to when our kids were younger, it was where I had an expectation and they weren't doing it, and it was like my selfishness was coming out, if that makes sense. Like whatever they were doing, like it could have been wrong, but I was also being very selfish in my response, which brought up that anger. And so I feel like those are those things that you turn over to the Lord, and it's been a process, though. I mean, now that I say this, so this is one of those things I'm going to feel like I want to scream at them tonight now because we've said this, but...
Or me.
No. I think one of them, John or Katie said earlier, it's like seeing your own selfishness, and that's what was rising up. And so I would always say to like take a step back, especially when you don't know what somebody's gone through for the day. Sometimes we just really don't know what someone is experiencing. And I think it's okay to give the benefit of the doubt, to think that they had a really rotten day and you can just love them. Like, I know I need that grace a lot, and a lot of times we will, talk about our day, like how did this go or how did that go? And sometimes I realize, like, he's asked me a ton of questions about my day, and I've unloaded and said a whole bunch of really awful things, or I'm, stressed out about this, or this didn't go right, and I didn't even ask him about his day. And so I think with that, when we feel angry, because we will, I think it's taking that step back, that breather, and just remember, like, it's going to be okay.
In your defense, when you do ask me about my day, I just say it was fine.
Fine.
It was
Fine.
Fine. That's my answer all the time. Okay, so now unfortunately, this is our last question. We are going to get to the rest of your questions another time. My plan right now, unless the Lord changes my plans, is that next week I'll just continue to answer some of these questions, but a lot of these are wrapped up in some of the other things I need to work through, questions, and then we'll clarify, and I'll give you time to ask more questions. So moving into retirement, or having moved into retirement for you, John. So your post-Air Force life, John, you've begun your new career, which really is kind of an extension of your Air Force career. Katie, at this point, not real sure, as of a week ago when we talked about it anyway. As you think through those things, John, as that opportunity came up, and then on top of that, you guys have started a company producing furniture. John is a prolific woodworker, and so they have a really, really cool wood shop. And so thinking through next steps, and for you too, Lance, because we're consistently thinking through next steps, it seems like. How do you tune into God's leadership? How do you know, or how do you think that you will know that God is leading you into something?
It's been an interesting path the last year. I felt it heavy on my heart a few years ago that it was just, it's time. It was probably during that time that you were really struggling. But I felt like God was just saying, hey, it's time for the next chapter, and it's time to move on to something else. So I did. I retired a few weeks ago, but I'd say about 6 months ago, 100% I was going towards opening a business, and subsequently we're in the process of all of that. It's quite the road. But my plan was to open a shop and have it up and running and building tables and all kinds of things. Dave, somebody that was here, he just recently moved, walks by me one day and shows me this advertisement. It's one line. It says 5th gen subject matter expert. Anyway, he goes, "Is this you?" I was like, I guess, Dave. He goes, this is a headhunter. Can I give him your information? I really didn't think much of it, and 10 minutes later had an email. Leading up to this, Katie had come home and said, "Hey, all my coworkers say you have to have 500 LinkedIn friends, and I am totally anti-social media. I find it exhausting, and so to think that I have to connect with 500 people to prove myself worthy sounded terrible." But anyway, he says this. They call me 2 days later, and they go, "Hey, we're desperate for you." I go, "You don't even know, you don't have a resume." "I don't even have a resume. Would you like one?" And he goes, yeah, throw one of those together. So I did. I think I did in an afternoon and sent it in, and the next thing we have a meeting, and I was hired. So they did the job offer, and here's the important part. I couldn't figure out what to discern because I had all these plans, and I was super excited about them. And I called Kyle, and I said, "Hey, Kyle, every single one of the people I've talked to, the first question they go, well, what's the compensation and what's the quality of life?" And Kyle didn't start with that. He goes, "Hey, where's the mission field?" He goes, "Is it standing in your garage, in your wood shop, with yourself and producing, tables, or is it, it has to be at Boeing amongst a whole bunch of people that desperately need to hear the word?" And once again, those moments where we've talked about a lot of them where that light bulb goes off and you go, not once did I think, where's the mission field? And nor did any of the people that I had talked to about it ask that question, but that was the one question. And we prayed on it, but it became very clear. It's like, well, you had these plans, and I have these plans for you. And so we have gone a completely different direction, and we're really grateful for that. And each day right now, I'm waiting on my security clearances to be turned over from the Air Force into Boeing so they can work on their programs. And so I literally sit in a room, and if any of you are IT people, it's pitch black except for the emergency light. And I asked if I could turn on the light, and they said absolutely not. This is to remain a dark room. And so I keep wondering, when's God going to flip on the light? And who am I supposed to talk to? And how's this going to play out? And so anxiously waiting and looking for those opportunities. But I don't think I ever approached life that way. I know I didn't. Where's the mission field? And I would encourage you all to do the same.
John's right. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do post-retirement other than enjoy being a stay-at-home mom for a little bit. We catalog kind of, right, life's a bunch of seasons, a combination of seasons, and we've had seasons where we've thrived as a family, and we've had seasons where we've barely survived. For one assignment in particular, we had a live-in nanny because of the requirements of our jobs. And it's just like, it was just not the family dynamic we were hoping for, right? God entrusted me to be a mom. I want to be present to be a mom, and I want to be present to be a good mom. And so I'm grateful that God's opened up the doorway to be able to retire and to provide stability to our family in a way that we've never had. And I'm really grateful for that. And I feel like God will lead me in the service, because there's a lot of ways to serve, right? When you don't let your job be your identity, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, well, I'm called into the military. I do feel like God's called us into the military and to serve in that capacity for that season. But I also feel like service will be through the church. Service will be through organizations where we can help people. And so I don't know what will manifest from that. God does, and I just trust him in that. But I am grateful for the opportunity to serve my family, especially going into the summer. So it'll be the first time my kids are not full-time in a camp or after-school program. And I know that may not sound like a lot, but for 2 military kids that are passed off to child care provider to program, right, just to make it work, I'm really, really grateful that God's opened up this opportunity. And so, yeah, we'll see what doors he continues to open to serve. And hopefully I walk through.
So right now, it's just like patiently waiting and
Patiently waiting
taking the steps you know you're supposed to take until the next
until the next right step.
is revealed.
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's really cool. How about you? How do you know, how do you know, or how do you think you know that God is leading you to something? No?
So I guess recently we've had somewhat of a period of transition. I stepped back to only work part-time this year because I really felt the Lord say, like, I need to be the helper. I need to be the mom. Because when we moved, we were just kind of jumping in and just going. And so it has been nice to pull back somewhat. We're in a busier season these couple months, but I walk with a lady that like encourages and mentors me. She's older, and she always says, when it is time for the decision to be made, the Lord will make it clear. Until he makes it clear, then it's not time to make a decision, which I know seems very simple, but I have really tried to let those words resonate with me, especially in a season where we're looking at, like, will I only be part-time? Will I take some more work? Will photography, what's happening? When I walked with her on Saturday, I just had an opportunity just to kind of share. And I said, I'm just kind of in a season of surrender, where I just say, Lord, I don't know what today's going to hold, but you've got this, and you have the plan. And I'm just going to kind of do today. I think with the passing of Cecily, it was really eye-opening to look and go, we are not promised tomorrow. We do not understand why the Lord would take a young mama. So I need to honor him today, because that could be any of us tomorrow. We don't know why. And so I think with that is being prepared and looking ahead and planning, because the Lord calls us to be a good steward of those things, but also not being so focused on what is out in the future that we miss sight of what he has for us today. And so I think we're in a season of where I go, Lord, I surrender to you. I'm going to follow you today.
Yeah, I think that I remember when Lindsay's grandma passed away, we were in J.C. Penney's one night shopping for funeral clothes, and she takes her phone out and takes a picture of her feet, which I think
I
feet
take
are
pictures of
gross.
lots of things.
She takes lots of pictures. I think feet are disgusting, like really, really super gross. And I'm like, why would you ever want a picture of your feet? But I didn't ask that. I said, what are you doing? And she said, I feel like the Lord just spoke to me. And he said, all you have to do is take the next step. Which has been something that has really resonated with us for years since then. In fact, what's her name? Elizabeth Elliot wrote a book, and it's this little short book.
It's Suffering is Never for Nothing. It's a worth a read.
Yeah, fantabulous book, and she says that a lot.
She
in it.
says,
Just
do the next
do
thing.
the next thing. Yeah, I mean it's the same thing. It's the exact same thing. Just take the steps that you know you're supposed to take, and when it's time for God to reveal the next step, He's going to reveal it. Like when you are trying to figure out your calling, when you're trying to figure out who you're going to spend the rest of your life with, the job, the whatever, like maybe God hasn't showed you that yet because it's not time for you to know that yet. And in the meantime, you need to take the steps that He's called you to take. And so, how do you know it's God when it comes up? Well, sometimes it's just like too good to, like you couldn't write the story, right? And we have stories like that too. I'm here because we're here because of that story, that it was just God. God made it so obvious that you couldn't have missed it at all, and I love that. Sometimes it's just more subtle, and sometimes God just works through your passions and your ideas and your dreams and things like that, and that's okay too. So just love Him and be obedient to Him, and you'll know. When it's God, you'll know. So, well, thank you guys so much for being here tonight. We are so grateful for both of you and for your kids. And sometimes life is hard, and it's right. And sometimes God just brings people into your lives, and you have no idea that these people are coming, but they're going to come. And we just met at the same time. It was just so amazing. I'm super grateful. And I hope this has been beneficial for you guys tonight. We will continue to work through those questions and things, but it's going to be my goal to try to bring in people that can impart wisdom into your lives outside of just me. You need more than me. So for tonight, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to pray. Our worship team's going to come, and we'll sing again. And then when we're done, we'll take up chairs and take down the pipe and drape, and you can kind of do your thing here in the gym. But let's go to the Lord in prayer. Father, we thank you so much for all your good gifts, for Jesus, most of all, the greatest gift that we could ever ask for, greater even than what we could ask for. Father, that you would choose to love us and choose to care for us and choose to save us by offering your Son for us. And so tonight, Father, I thank you for friendship, the gift of friendship. Thank you for John and Katie, for Bennett and Ava, and for the role that they have in our lives. God, we are so thankful that you brought them into our lives, and I thank you that you've brought them here tonight to talk to our YAs and just to impart some wisdom, some awesome things that they've learned from you. God, I pray that you would continue to lead and guide them in their marriage. I pray that you would encourage them, strengthen them, continue to reveal the plans that you have for them. But thank you for their service to our country, but I thank you even more for their service to you and for the relationship that they have with you. Thank you for working in their lives so that you could draw us all together as part of this faith family here at FBCO. And so Pray that you have been honored tonight and that you will be honored in the rest of our evening. We ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.